The notification pinged on her phone, and her heart skipped a beat. Him. Again. She stared at the screen, her thumb hovering over the message. It was from Alex, the username she'd created just for this, just for him. But it wasn't really Alex. It was her. Her. Emma. Sitting in her dimly lit apartment, pretending to be someone else, someone bolder, someone who didn't stutter when he walked by her desk at work. She opened the message. Hey, stranger. You've been quiet today. Everything okay? Emma bit her lip, her fingers trembling as she typed back. Just busy. Work's been intense. Work. That was the irony of it all. Because he was there. Every day. Just a few desks away. Liam. The man who made her forget how to form coherent sentences whenever he smiled at her. The man who had no idea that the woman he was flirting with online was the same one who spilled coffee on his keyboard last week. She glanced at the clock. 10:47 p.m. Too late to be messaging him, probably. But then again, Alex was supposed to be a night owl. A free spirit. Someone who didn't follow rules. Someone who wasn't Emma. Her phone buzzed again. Intense how? Tell me about it. Emma hesitated. She could lie, make up some dramatic story about a high-stakes project. Or she could tell the truth, or at least part of it. There's this guy at work, she typed slowly, her pulse quickening. He's distracting. The response came almost instantly. Distracting how? She could picture him now, leaning back in his chair, that smirk playing on his lips. The same smirk he'd given her when she'd apologized for the coffee incident. You're fine, he'd said, his voice low and teasing. But maybe next time, aim for the trash can instead of my laptop. Emma shook her head, trying to focus. He's just, always there, she typed. And he's so confident. It's hard not to notice him. Sounds like you've got a crush, came the reply, followed by a winking emoji. Emma's cheeks burned. Maybe, she admitted, though the word felt like a confession. There was a pause, and then, what's stopping you from talking to him? She laughed softly, though there was no humor in it. I don't know. I guess I'm just, not that kind of person. What kind of person? The kind who walks up to someone and says, hey, I think you're amazing. Another pause. Then, maybe you should try it. Emma stared at the screen, her heart pounding. Easier said than done. True, he replied. But sometimes, taking a risk is worth it. She didn't respond right away. Instead, she leaned back against her couch, staring up at the ceiling. Was it worth it? Was any of this worth it? She'd started this whole charade because she wanted to get closer to him, to see if there was even a chance he might feel the same way about her. But now, it felt like she was trapped in a web of her own making. Her phone buzzed again, pulling her out of her thoughts. You still there? Yeah, she typed quickly. Just thinking. About him? She hesitated. Maybe. Tell me more about him. Emma sighed, her fingers moving almost on their own. He's tall. Dark hair. Always wears these fitted shirts that make it impossible not to stare. Sounds like you've got it bad, he replied, and she could almost hear the laughter in his words. Maybe I do, she admitted, though the words felt like a weight lifting off her chest. There was a long pause this time, and Emma wondered if she'd said too much. But then, you know, sometimes people aren't who they seem. She frowned, her brow furrowing. What do you mean? Just that, sometimes, the person you think you know might surprise you. Emma's heart skipped a beat. Was he talking about himself? Or was she reading too much into it? Maybe, she typed cautiously. But sometimes, people are exactly who they seem. Another pause. Then, true. But sometimes, they're playing a game without you even realizing it. Emma froze, her breath catching in her throat. A game. Was he? No. He couldn't know. Could he? Before she could respond, her phone buzzed again. Anyway, I should let you go. Big day tomorrow. She stared at the screen, her mind racing. Yeah, she typed slowly. Good night. Sweet dreams, he replied, followed by a smiley face. Emma set her phone down, her heart still pounding. Sweet dreams. She doubted she'd be getting any sleep tonight. Not with the way her mind was spinning. The next morning, she walked into the office feeling like she hadn't slept at all. Her eyes were heavy, her thoughts still tangled in the conversation from last night. She barely noticed when Liam walked by her desk, until he stopped. Morning, Emma, he said, his voice smooth and warm. She looked up, startled. Oh. Hi, Liam. He smiled, that same smirk that always made her stomach flip. You look tired. Late night? She forced a laugh, though it sounded hollow even to her ears. Something like that. He tilted his head, studying her for a moment. Well, try to take it easy today. We wouldn't want you burning out. She nodded, her throat suddenly dry. Thanks. He lingered for a moment longer, his gaze lingering on her in a way that made her skin tingle. Then he turned and walked away, leaving her sitting there, her heart racing and her mind spinning with questions she couldn't answer. Was he playing a game? And if he was, what did that mean for her? Emma's fingers hovered over her keyboard, the cursor blinking mockingly at her. She had spent the entire day replaying Liam's words in her head, the way he'd lingered at her desk, the way his gaze had seemed to pierce through her carefully constructed facade. Was he on to her? The thought sent a shiver down her spine, but it was quickly replaced by a surge of determination. She couldn't keep living in this limbo, torn between her real self and the persona she'd created online. She needed answers. The office was quiet now, the hum of computers and the occasional clatter of keyboards replaced by an eerie silence. Most of her coworkers had already left for the day, but Emma knew Liam often stayed late. She glanced at the clock, 7:15 p.m. He'd still be here. Taking a deep breath, she stood up, smoothing her skirt and adjusting her blouse. Her heart pounded in her chest as she made her way to his office, each step feeling heavier than the last. The door was slightly ajar, and she could see him inside, his broad shoulders hunched over his desk as he typed furiously on his laptop. She knocked lightly, and he looked up, his dark eyes meeting hers. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then, a slow smile spread across his face. Emma. What brings you here so late? Her mouth went dry. Just say it. We need to talk. His eyebrows lifted in surprise, but he leaned back in his chair, gesturing for her to come in. All right. Close the door. She did as he asked, the click of the latch echoing in the small room. Turning to face him, she crossed her arms over her chest, trying to steady her nerves. I know you know. He tilted his head, his expression unreadable. Know what? About Alex, she said, her voice trembling slightly. About me. Liam's smile didn't falter. If anything, it grew wider. Ah. So you're finally ready to talk about that. Her stomach dropped. He knew. Of course he knew. She felt like a fool for ever thinking she could outsmart him. How long? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Since the beginning, he admitted, leaning forward and resting his elbows on the desk. Your little Alex persona wasn't exactly subtle, Emma. She felt her cheeks burn with embarrassment. Then why didn't you say anything? Why play along? He shrugged, his gaze never leaving hers. Because I was curious. I wanted to see how far you'd take it. And honestly, I found it kind of intriguing. Her heart skipped a beat. Intriguing? She wasn't sure whether to feel flattered or mortified. So what now? She asked, her voice shaking. Are you going to report me? Get me fired? Liam chuckled, a low, rumbling sound that sent a shiver down her spine. Report you? No. That's not what I want. Then what do you want? She demanded, her frustration bubbling to the surface. He stood up then, his tall frame towering over her as he rounded the desk. She took a step back, but he closed the distance between them in 2 long strides. What do I want? He repeated, his voice dropping to a husky murmur. I want to know why you felt the need to hide behind a screen instead of just talking to me. She swallowed hard, her mind racing. I didn't think you'd be interested in someone like me. His eyes darkened, and he reached out, gently brushing a strand of hair from her face. And what makes you think that? Her breath hitched at his touch, her skin tingling where his fingers grazed her cheek. I don't know, she admitted, her voice barely audible. I guess I just didn't think I was enough. Liam's expression softened, and he cupped her face in his hand, forcing her to meet his gaze. Emma, he said, his voice firm but gentle. You're more than enough. Her heart swelled at his words, but before she could respond, he leaned in, his lips brushing against hers in a kiss that was both tender and possessive. She gasped, her hands instinctively gripping his shirt as he deepened the kiss, his tongue teasing hers in a way that made her knees weak. When he finally pulled away, they were both breathing heavily, their foreheads resting against each other. Does that answer your question? He murmured, his voice thick with desire. Emma nodded, unable to form coherent words. Her mind was a whirlwind of emotions, relief, desire, and something deeper that she couldn't quite name. But one thing was clear, the line between reality and fantasy had blurred, and there was no going back. Liam's hand slid down to her waist, pulling her closer until their bodies were pressed together. You have no idea how long I've wanted to do that, he whispered against her lips. She shivered at the intensity in his voice, her own desire mirroring his. Then why didn't you? She asked, her voice trembling. He smirked, his eyes glinting with mischief. Because I wanted you to make the first move. Her eyes widened in surprise. You were waiting for me? He nodded, his hands tightening around her waist. I wanted to see if you'd have the courage to step out from behind that screen and face me as yourself. Emma felt a surge of pride at his words, but it was quickly overshadowed by the heat pooling in her stomach as he leaned in again, his lips capturing hers in another searing kiss. This time, there was no hesitation, no doubt, just raw, unfiltered passion. As the kiss deepened, Liam backed her up against the wall, his body pinning hers in place. She moaned softly into his mouth, her hands roaming over his broad shoulders and down his chest. His muscles tensed under her touch, and she could feel the evidence of his arousal pressing against her thigh. Liam, she breathed, her voice barely audible. He pulled away just enough to look into her eyes, his own dark with desire. Tell me what you want, Emma, he said, his voice rough. She hesitated for a moment, her mind racing with possibilities. But then she met his gaze, and all her doubts melted away. You, she whispered. I want you. A slow smile spread across his face, and he leaned in again, his lips brushing against hers as he spoke. Then you've got me,